Hello, I am Linda Elder with the Foundation for Critical Thinking, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization in California. I'm interviewing today Dr. Claire Nader, who is a political scientist and author recognized for her work on the impact of science on society. She is an advocate for numerous causes at the local, national, and international level. As the first social scientist working at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, she joined pioneering initiatives in energy conservation, and the multifaceted connections between science, technology, and public policy. While at Oak Ridge, she organized a groundbreaking global conference on science and technology in developing countries. Later, she worked to improve corporate and government policies affecting communities through a variety of projects and nonprofit institutions. Dr. Nader holds a PhD in public law and government from Columbia University and has a long list of contributions to the common good. Welcome, Dr. Nader.
Thank you very much, Linda. Can I call you Linda?
Yes, please. And we
You
are
can call me
focused,
Claire.
yes, we are focused today on Dr. Nader's latest achievement, which is a book entitled You Are Your Own Best Teacher. This is a book for tweens, a book for for tweens and their families. And the subtitle is Sparkling the Curiosity, Imagination, and Intellect of Tweens. And Claire, I'd like to begin there with your subtitle and your title. Obviously, you are telling the reader, look, you can teach yourself lots of things, and it's up to you to do that. And you're focusing on their curiosity, their imagination, and their intellects. So why don't you begin, if you would, with your purpose for writing this book and who you see as your audience.
Well, I first started because of my audience was going to be preteens, 9 to 12. Why do I choose that cohort? Because they are at the height of their idealism, not just an idealism and imagination, but it's practical. For example, when if you have a solution to a problem, you don't apply it. They don't understand that. For example, if you have a drinking problem, the parent has a drinking problem, you have to acknowledge it and then try to do something about it. And I wrote the book because I like to think we had books all over our house. And when we wanted to learn something, we went and looked at a book. Didn't have to be any special topic. We read a lot of books. Just picking up the book and looking at the table of contents informs you a lot. You remember that, and when it comes up in a conversation at home or you have a paper to do for school, then you know that you've got something like that. We didn't have computers or apps where we could locate a book that we're looking for, whether we had it alphabetically or not. There are apps now for that. So
Mm-hmm.
you know exactly where the book is in your house.
So the book is for fundamentally for students, for students ages 9 to 12, and that of course could be expanded, and it's for their parents. And you are beginning with your own experience with books, and you are stressing the importance of being exposed to and taking the time to go to books and to just open them, just look at them, just look at their table of contents, and to have the confidence in yourself that you can learn something from them.
Hmm. That's
Mhm.
correct. We used to say that, let's see if I can remember, that we were trained in school and were educated at home and inspired in the town library.
That's an interesting saying. And what did you mean by that?
Well, this I was really describing how we were raised,
Hmm.
and it was very it was an exciting thing to go to the town library, which was just a block away. But what am I going to learn today? And how am I going to benefit? And then at supper, I had something to talk about. We all did that, the siblings. We had a great big brother, a brother Shafiq. Shafiq in Arabic means empathy. Well, he was certainly well named, and we called him Shaf. He led us because he was the firstborn of immigrants in this country from Lebanon, and so he opened the doors in many ways, not only for us but for my parents. You know what the school systems were. My mother was a school teacher in Lebanon, spoke French and English and so on, but it was a great family to be in. Sometimes Ralph used to be asked, "How come you grew up like this? You know, how come you turned out like this, doing the kind of work you're doing?" And he was always at a loss. But he said, "Well, the best answer I can have for you is I was lucky in my choice of parents."
Hmm. So you're speaking of your brother, Ralph Nader, and you're talking about your experience as a family and how unique that was and how important that was to your education. And you had a special brother, the eldest, who was encouraging all of you to be independent learners and to come together, obviously with your entire family, your parents included, to discuss and debate, I would imagine, ideas.
Yes, we did it all the time, and it was almost very natural because they were immigrants. You know, what did they have to say about the new country? It was what they had in the so-called old country, and then what they had is a lot to contribute. They had their life there, where they were married.
So you've talked just a little bit about the books that influenced your thinking, and all of the siblings were encouraged to read independently. And again, that to me is directly related to confidence in oneself, that if you just try something, well, you may well succeed at it. And if you just go and get a book and open it, well, you may actually learn from it, right? And then if you talk about your ideas, well, then you learn even more and you get some ideas corrected.
That's correct. Learning
Mhm.
and unlearning.
Right. I would imagine there would be some interesting, heated debates in your family in the positive sense. Is that true?
Yes, yes. We were never allowed to run under fire if your ideas were being challenged. Never. You had to answer.
So the other part of your saying was you are trained in school or at school. And can you elaborate that?
Well, I'll give you a quote from Mark Twain. "I never let my schooling get in the way of my education." And it's still true, by the way. Got a wonderful letter from a school teacher who was just that year retiring after 35 years of teaching, including middle school, which is the cohort. And she wrote me the nicest letter, really a review of the book and how much she valued it and how much she could test herself from the what she learned. And she did confirm for me that in school, that cohort has an innocence about it, has a wonderful imagination. They're not held up by what's expected of them to be said, what they're supposed to be saying. All fresh as they look out onto the world and explain it in their own way, like how to be in nature, walking in the woods. My mother once gave us a little exercise. We were outside in the backyard. My father was in the restaurant business. He was always ordering bushels of apple, and we knew the price of these things because we told and were expected to know how much things cost. But then she went on. She said, "How many bushel of apples, a box of grapes, and so on." And she then moved, and she said, "How much is that breeze we're feeling? How much is that sun we're feeling? How much was this and that?" And she got us to think that all of that was free. Not everything had a price. She was a wonderful teacher as she brought her children up, and my father was too.
So let me just reiterate a bit of what you said, because we didn't hear all of what you said. It was cutting out a bit. You were walking along with your father and you saw a woman cleaning the gutter, and you said, "Oh, I'm glad I don't."
A person. I think it was a man.
Okay, a person cleaning the gutter, and you said, "I'm glad I don't have that job." And he said, "You need to be respectful of all of the work that people do and appreciate that contribution that they're making," something like that.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so I was never disrespectful. I was always, but he when he put it into words, it stuck. So when I'm going to airports and people are hauling people around, or they're uh, rolling the luggage and loading the plane, paid attention to that kind of work that makes life easier for many others.
Yes, it's a very good point. And then your second point about uh, the importance of taking things slowly and steadily. And to me, this is related to the concept of the idea that the race is to the tortoise and not to the hare. That is, you plod along foot, one deliberate foot at a time, and you have confidence that if you do that, you will achieve your goals, assuming you have the capacity to achieve those goals and that you're reasonable about your goals.
I'll tell you something about that point. That my father, by the way, in walking home, we talked about a lot of things. So it's like being in school, because it came out of the reality of his life. Sometimes it was about thriftiness, for example. Not waste food, we have to do. That was very useful. That time was spent teaching.
Right. So there are a lot of times where, just in your everyday living of your life, your parents would point things out to you that were an important part of your education, that have stayed with you through all of your life.
Yes. I want to say something about the dictionary. I was home one day and after school, and my brother Schaff was home in the living room with this big book. "What are you reading?" He said, "The dictionary." "Dictionary? You don't read a dictionary, Schaff. Look up words and find out meanings and derivatives and so on." "Oh, no, you read a dictionary." And behind every meaning of a word is the skin of a thought. Why do I say so much about things I learned from at my age? Because it shaped me and it anchored me. A word is anchor. I was always in conversation, and I now remember that I wrote this book, of course, and then Sherry Turkle read it. You know who she is? She's from MIT, and she's always looked at technology and children and conversation. And she says that she would like the whole country to be in a continuous conversation, because if we don't converse with each other, how do we live with each other? How do we know about minority rights? How do we? This extends my father's comment about what the economy really. So he said that you have to understand how the economy goes if you're going to understand money, to take care of it. So I remember teaching my grandson, who was a youngster, and I said, you know about checks? And you have to learn something first from your grandfather. I said, what is that? What he taught me. Never write a check that you don't have money for in the bank. There are things like that that helped shape even this book.
Yes, I see that. By the way, let me just mention that the book is really a series of, let's say, vignettes from your life and using your wisdom. And a lot of the things that you're talking about here, you've incorporated, and of course, you've added more based on your current conversations with tweens.
Yes, it's a book that I want in the hands of every tween, at least. Because if you put it in the hands of tweens before they reach the adolescence and all that might interest them at that point, you have a way to navigate the bumps of the teenage years, and you find your way better, and you go have a better life, I think.
Right. And now some people would say that, like, discussing, for example, the importance of the dictionary. Now, the dictionary includes educated usages of words, and they're a good starting place for understanding educated usage. They don't tell us, they don't give us everything we need to know about elaborated conceptions, but they do give us a good starting place. And yet, dictionaries are often treated today as if they were passe, as if, well, who needs a dictionary? And well, the assumption is on many people's part that if you, let's say the part of the naive thinker of all ages, that if you want to know something, you just look on the internet. And of course, this is very dangerous and not true.
Well, I remember Ralph gave a talk with some students at Hotchkiss in Connecticut, school high-end, quote unquote. And he asked them who the representative was from their district, and they didn't know. These were a couple of students, maybe 6 or 7, gathered around him after a talk. And he said, you should know these things. How do you not know who makes the laws? And they said, well, we can always look it up. Device, you see. So you can't, as Susan Lynn says, you can't go to bed with a device. You have to see your parents before bedtime. He wrote the wonderful book. I don't know if you know it, but it is wonderful if you want to know about the harms of all these devices called big tech, big companies, and the lives of children. And then there's professor of law at Fordham. She called these devices co-parents.
And to the degree that that's true, it's again a dangerous prospect because there are no standards built in to the internet.
You're all about critical thinking. Well, this book is about critical thinking. It is critical thinking. All of these topics have you thinking critically. They mean, do I agree? Do you agree with that?
I would say that what you have written in the book are contextualizations of critical thinking through and through. They're your critical thinking revealed to us for this set of students, this particular these ages that you're focused on. And we focus in our work on explicit critical thinking concepts and principles, and these concepts and principles underlie what you've written here. And you're making wonderful points throughout the book that if students were to take them seriously, could powerfully influence their minds. And I would say, in addition, they still do need explicit tools of critical thinking because they'll need to be thinking about many other topics in addition to these. And I wanted to read just a little bit and then have you comment on some of these. There's so much in the book that I could focus on and that you could comment on, but you have a section, for example, let's talk about screens, and you were just mentioning that, so I'm focusing on that. And here you say, among other things, remember the internet is simply a tool. You can drive it responsibly with a steady hand as you would a car, or you can drive it recklessly. And you talk about the benefits of the information that is available on the internet, but that you have to use this tool carefully.
No, it is interesting, isn't it? You have to wait to get a driver's license. And here you have there's no limit at all. You can start when you're babies. Doesn't make sense because it's a dangerous tool.
Yes, it's a good comparison. And one of the things that people don't realize, and this is people of any potential age, is that psychologists are often used to figure out how to keep people addicted to their phones and to these devices. And people don't see that these are addictions.
The Attorney General of New Mexico has looked into, I'm going to quote him here, I want Facebook and Instagram fail to protect underage users. New Mexico's Attorney General alleges in a lawsuit that follows an undercover online investigation. He says, our investigation into Meta's social media platforms demonstrates they are not safe spaces for children. And the suit claims that Meta harms children and teenagers through the addictive design of its platform, degrading users' mental health, their sense of self-worth, and their physical safety. Pretty powerful.
Yes. And more generally, the fact that people often feel that they have to be constantly connected to their phones. They have to have the phone in their hand. They have to get beeps from it. They have to be on social media. If they're not getting a message on social media or uploading a picture or taking a picture of their food that they're eating and uploading it, or if they're not doing that, it's like they feel that they're not living. And it's the opposite. The opposite is true. If you're always walking around with this in your hand, you can't put it down, and you're getting these beeps and these tones and these vibrations, and then that's an addiction to which you're falling prey.
To which they have fallen prey in droves. And they don't even look up if they're crossing the street.
Yes. This, and more than one person has been killed by their inattention based on their phone use and having headphones on and not hearing trains coming or cars coming.
Yeah.
So I begin with your statement. Remember, the internet is simply a tool. And people should know that they should use these tools deliberately and only under certain conditions. And all of us have to be careful that we're not overusing these tools.
Including obstetricians. Now, Linda, uh, um, uh, Susan Lynn has written, now she says, they get these babies, used to these tools to keep, it's like a pacifier.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's the new pacifier.
Right. It is.
And to go to that age is criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, there's a law firm, maybe more than one, in Alabama, I think, the Beasley firm, and it's specializing in the harms created by these devices. How do you like that?
Mm-hmm.
And I called up to try to get the key lawyer, and he said we can't comment. We're still in court. It's very hard for the law to catch up with this.
Mm-hmm.
Laws and so on, unless they see that we're in a battle with these companies.
Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned in your book, companies often do control the people within the societies.
Yeah, we look at the junk food. That's a controlling process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's old. Junk food is old. They've had it for years. Now you have even worse things. If critical thinking took on just these kinds of issues, which can bring to it some muscle besides academic muscle, that's where I'd like to see.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are a lot of people working.
But by the way, can we give Linda? Can we give the? You can get this book by going to inspiringtweens.com. Inspiringtweens.com. Your most grateful readers would end up being parents.
Yes.
They've lost control. A lot of parents know they've lost control of their children through these devices.
Mm-hmm.
They go to bed with them.
Mm-hmm.
They wake up at night. They have a partner.
Yes, this is what I mean. And but they have no sense that they're addicted. They don't see that as an addiction. They just think that is a good thing and normal. Everybody else is doing it, and if everyone else is doing it, then it must be a good thing. And I had someone tell me recently who is in that category of always on the phone say to me, "Well, Linda, you're part of the older generation that reads books. We don't do that now." And that's a sad admission, but it tells a lot about the control that these devices have over people's minds without their having any knowledge of this control.
You know, my sister Laura is out in Berkeley.
Yes.
Uh, at, he taught for 62 years in anthropology, and she started a long time ago, and she's writing about it now. It'll be published. Controlling processes, and she taught the students by having them. She led them to describe the controlling processes in their life, and it was dynamite. That course, they always had a lot of students in it.
Well, we count on teachers to expand our minds, to open our minds, to help us learn fundamentals of critical thinking, and so that we can reason through the important problems in life. But teachers themselves are not learning these tools. And this is one of the reasons for your book. And unfortunately, those few teachers that are fostering critical thinking are usually not enough in the lives of a given person, because there's so many forces working against critical thinking. And we need to start at a very young age, which is what you're doing in this book. That's one of your purposes, to get people when they're 9, 10, 11, 12, not when they're at the college level where they've already learned bad habits of thinking.
The book is it's an antidote to all the harms, all these devices. An antidote that you can use, that children can use, grown-ups. I had one reviewer who's a grown-up. She said, I started reading it from the beginning and I didn't stop until I finished. Why can't I read it? And my gave me a lot to think about, a lot of references, a lot of this, a lot of that. And she made the case, and she wrote a wonderful review for the Republican American newspaper in Waterbury, Connecticut.
Oh, it's true. There's a lot in this, and just so that people have a sense of the book, some of the other topics. So you have a section on the truth about school and some of the limitations that teachers have. Some of the limitations that are placed on them are included in that section. You have a section titled Time Out for Gratitude, one on solitude, one on being smart, which I'll just read a little bit on this. The very beginning, it says you can work up a lot of damaging anxiety thinking about who is smartest among the students in your class. Grades on endless standardized tests feed this numerical ranking atmosphere, and you yourself may internalize it by feeling less smart or smarter than your classmates. If smart means grades or talking well or reading fast, you should just relax. There are many other ways to be smart that mean more for your accomplishments in school and in life. And you go on to talk about how, and this comes in throughout the book, that you, the reader, can achieve. You may not be the fastest person the person to complete the test the fastest. You may not be considered or labeled the smartest, but that doesn't mean you cannot accomplish. And this is very important for students to hear.
I was in a high school principal. We were taking questions because we had I'd gotten a speaker about waging peace in a time of war, Coleman McCarthy's, wonderful. And she kept noticing hesitant hand trying to go up. You know, there was more hands that go up without thinking than this one was hesitant. So he called on her. He noticed her. He called on her, and she asked the best question. Said to me later, the principal who knew the student, he said, that was a wonderful question. He said, yes, and she is a challenged student. Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All grades. So I would be a good author and say, get the little book, get the little book, get the little book.
Well, let me bring this to a close and just mention a couple other things that are in the book. There's something on solitude. There's a section on history infused with myths. And this section is focused on how we often tell history from the point of view of the way we would like to remember history rather than the way it actually was.
Is right.
And you open up with the killing of many innocent indigenous peoples when Columbus quote, well, you say Columbus did not discover America, and yet we still
He invaded America.
and slaughtered many what we call Native Americans now. And this connects with Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States, in which he focuses on telling history from the point of view of oppressed peoples throughout our history. And of course, it's for the higher reading level, but it connects directly with what you're saying here. So there are so many wonderful sections here, and I strongly recommend this to all teachers and all of the tweens and all tweens and those above that level and their parents. So let me bring this to a close and again remind people that you can get the book at inspiringtweens.com. We've been delighted to have on the program today Dr. Claire Nader, who wrote this book. And there's just a tremendous amount of wisdom coming from Dr. Nader's own experience, both as a child and as she has lived her life as a person who's thought critically about many issues. So thank you, Claire, so much for coming onto the program.
It was a pleasure, and I'm glad to know the Center for Critical Thinking.
Thank you so much again.